Today is Sunday, January 21st, and you are watching the Viewscreen.
The Viewscreen is your weekly Star Trek magazine show, streaming live to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, with news, features, and a lot of love for all our chosen Star Trek family around the globe.
If you're not able to tune in live, catch us up on the BQN YouTube channel, or we now have it as a podcast so you can listen to the audio only. So please check us out. We are everywhere.
We really appreciate all your support, and I'd like to remind you all of the 287th rule of acquisition, which is subscribers equals profit. So remember to hit the like and subscribe button to make sure you never miss an episode.
You can see that little like button. It's the thumbs up. Come on, thumbs up, like this video. Well, a very warm welcome to all of our live viewers this morning. Please drop your comments in the chat and we'll throw them up as we go through. We would love to answer any of your questions or get your comments. So Kelvin, how are you doing?
I'm really good. I'm really good. I'm week 3 into dry January, so the end is in sight. Just got one more week and a little bit to get through. But yeah, I'm feeling a lot healthier for it. I'm not gonna lie. My skin is amazing.
So I take it you didn't make the cocktail that we had on last show.
I'm saving it until I'm doing dry January and wet February.
Oh. Well, that's when we have the cruise, so that's a very good thing.
And how are you this week? How's your week been?
Doing really well. You know what is new? Not much, just enjoying life. Oh no, I had 2 wonderful visitors this week. Hello to Ron and Ben. So sorry. You know what happens to the old brain. But they came in, and so I got to see them. So good when Trek family comes to visit. I'm very just honored that they even took time to pop in and say hello. We had a lovely dinner.
Oh, I can't wait to see them next month on the cruise. Right, shall we see what we've got coming up on today's show?
Well, we have with us returning Kristin Stratulat, who's going to bring us the news and trending.
Hey, Kristin.
Hi.
Make sure you grab your sewing machines and all your material, because we've got cosplay tips from Cam Judkins. Hey, Cam.
And we are honored today to have Edwin Hodge, sociology professor and a Trek fan.
Hi, folks.
Another packed show. So let's get on with it. Shall we begin? So I'd like to introduce and welcome back for a second appearance on the Viewscreen. It's Kristin with some news and trending for the week. Hey, how are you doing?
Oh, it was the husband had a show last night, so I did break my dry January a little early. I will say I am feeling it this morning, but that's okay. That's okay. I have my coffee, I have my Trek, I'm good to go.
Yes.
On my few hours. But so Kelvin, like, my hats off. You're setting such an amazing example. It's not easy. It's such a point of, like, you just go out and that's what you do. Let's grab a drink. It's just so ubiquitous with socializing. So anyway,
it is. I have a lot of sympathy for people who don't drink full stop for various reasons, because I've just been turning down social occasions all weekend, saying, no, I'm not going out. I don't trust myself. So come back in 2 weeks. Right. What have you got for us?
Yeah, it's been a week. There was so let's just jump straight into it. So first of all, love starting my segment each week with a little happy birthday. So today is a happy birthday to Message in a Bottle. And I rewatched this technically this morning at about 2 a.m. just so that I could sort of refresh my memory with this one. And it's such a fun episode. It is such I love that it's sort of the moment where the hope starts to come back on Voyager, and they're able to reach their families, and sort of the reality that they were not indeed lost forever comes back to the families of the crew members, and it's really a beautiful episode for that. I always love the ongoing conflict between B'Elanna and Seven of Nine. I think it's such an endearing relationship the two of them have. And then, I mean, you have guest star Andy Dick. So what more could you ask for?
Yeah, so he was
an obnoxious character.
Yeah, I know. What show was he known for at the time? Was it something about news radio?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's you love him or hate him or love to hate him. I mean, he's definitely one of those actors that is quite polarizing. But Robert Picardo is a genius, as we all know, and couldn't ask more from his performance in this episode. So yeah, happy birthday, 26 years ago today.
Wow.
I heard a very, very scary statistic this week, speaking of birthdays, in that Voyager is now, where is it? So looking back at Voyager is like us looking back at when the original series was on, when Voyager started.
Oh,
so
like that. No.
Yeah, no, I didn't like that.
But time goes by very fast, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, it's like the episode of TNG Timescapes where Data is trying to figure out the meaning and the concept of time at the end with the boiling pot, and it takes the same time, but he's got the internal chronometer we don't have, right? So when he turns it off, suddenly he gets that whole idea that time passes differently, and yeah, it's kind of scary, and that's very much where we come to take advantage of the here and now and the people that we love and just come together. So yeah. So on to another piece of Trek news. I brought this to everybody, my first show, that the launch was going up from Cape Canaveral with DNA from a lot of the Trek crew and the lovely old lady from Vancouver. The launching system didn't work.
Oh no.
So it made it partway up, but it didn't get the oomph that it needed to get into the orbit. So instead of just letting it kind of be, what do they actually called it? Space garbage? They cut everything and just let everything fall back to Earth, and it burned up in the atmosphere on January 18th.
Oh, so wow. That's the legacy of DeForest Kelley, James Doohan. They didn't make it; they burned up in the atmosphere.
Yep. Margell.
Wow.
Yeah. Gene Roddenberry was there. But thank goodness it wasn't all of their ashes. It was just a little tube. Because otherwise, could you imagine the drama?
That question. Yeah, I was going to say, have we got more of them to go?
Yeah, and so my question as well, there was nothing about this and no clarification, but are people getting refunds?
Wow.
Or was there a no refund policy? Like, we were promised literally the moon and we got burned to dust. So
well,
I would kind of want to see some money back in my bank account if that was my family member.
I mean, it is unique. You have a true space cremation. I mean,
do.
If you want to put it that way.
Yeah. And they had the option to just let it kind of hang in low orbit, but they actually said they were worried about it potentially crashing into satellites and stuff because there's no traffic control up in space. So for safety reasons and just not to have garbage. I mean, we've already destroyed the planet. We're not going to start polluting the atmosphere as well. They decided this was the best plan of attack. So
well, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I like the idea that maybe a few little particles of made their way back down and sprinkled somewhere to grow new life that might be inspired by all of these heroes.
Yeah. And technically, they did make it to space. They just didn't stay in space. Which was the whole uniqueness of this launch, was that it was going to get them to a high enough orbit. Actually, at one point, people were saying they were going to make it to the moon, so their final resting place would have been the moon. And then some indigenous groups here, actually from the States, were saying, so now you're just going to start colonizing the moon. And so it got to this really unique conversation. So look, if you want to read more about it, I definitely suggest just looking up the space launch, and you'll see all about the flop, and you'll get some very interesting details about what went on, about the discussion, getting it to the moon, and what went wrong. It was a lot of technical mumbo jumbo that's not me. But yeah, the propulsion just went, and that was that. So
surprised there haven't been like a raft of memes going around about kind of Scotty being on board saying, she can't take much more. Missed opportunity.
Oh yeah, Christos, that's what I do. I try to look on the, you got it in life, because there are a lot of flops in life, aren't there? Always got to look on the bright side.
And in death, apparently.
Yeah.
But on the bright side of things, the next slide shows that has Trek somehow invaded Mars? So this came back from the Curiosity rover, and I guess some Trekkie was looking at it going, well, look at that. Look at the little insignia. We're right there. So I loved that. So, we didn't make it to the moon, but maybe we're on Mars. So
it's Tranquility Base, no. Utopia Planitia, yes.
You know what? It makes sense. Because we're getting ready, because we need a Utopia Planitia.
We do. I love that. I love seeing the Delta just show up in random pictures, and you're like, or when you look up in the clouds and you see a Delta, it's like, Trek is everywhere.
It really is. It really is. And this is going to make me sound really, really cool, but I was doing my adult coloring book the other night, and it had a lot of stars in it. I was like, oh, I love stars. I'm drawing them. And as I'm drawing them, I'm realizing, like, this is part of a star. I don't know if anyone else has ever realized it, but it just sort of it's just missing the two little points out the side to be an actual star.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I'm like coloring in these stars, and I would just go like up and down. I'm like, oh, it's the Star Trek. Anyway, things you do on a Friday night on a cold night in Canada. And then we have a little bit of update from the 4 rumored / confirmed movies. So there are 4 that are apparently on its way, but some more details have come out about them. So the only one that is actually confirmed and in production is the Section 31 movie. It will be filming from January, so now, until March in Toronto. So I will actually be making a 2 days layover in Toronto to see my best friend and his partner on my way to the cruise. And so I'm going to be like, can we go see if we can see them anywhere?
Ooh.
So, yeah. So that is the only one that actually has any sort of concrete backing behind it, but it is going to be released on a streaming platform, not in theaters. Right. The streaming platform that they said it was going to be on was Paramount Plus, but then I saw another article saying how things are, Trek stuff is migrating off of Paramount Plus onto Max, which is previously HBO Max or Crave here in Canada. So when it's actually time to launch, I don't know if it will indeed be on Paramount Plus or if it will be on the new home on Max. So we'll see.
It seems a bit of a mess that Paramount Plus went to the trouble of gathering all of Trek and taking it away from Netflix and Amazon Prime and hosting it centrally. And now they've realized they can't afford it, so they're sending it back out to places. Oh, dear.
Paramount's been the home of Star Trek for decades. It's kind of almost sad that it's moving away from that. So...
So, yeah, I wonder if they're giving the rights to HBO. And so then remember when before Paramount combined with CBS, like Paramount had rights for the movies and CBS had for the television series. And then when they joined, that's why we got it all together. So then they gathered everything. So I'm wondering, are they just taking this lump thing and giving it to HBO Max for their rights?
I
So
don't
like
know.
would...
Because they're saying that there are three new Trek movies, so like the 2009 and the two after, are going to remain on Paramount Plus. But that's all that's going to remain on Paramount Plus.
Wow.
Everything else is going here. And then Netflix, of course, has Prodigy. So, it's just temporary. Paramount is for sale. Okay.
I did hear Paramount seriously in trouble. Just like, well, that's because you're not marketing Star Trek well enough, obviously.
Isn't that the truth? Like we're here willing to spend the money to watch the show that we love. But I also get frustrated where it's becoming, you need 4 different streaming services just to piecemeal together your Star Trek, which is why I still have my DVDs and DVD player.
Mm-hmm.
So if all of this goes away, I'm okay. I still got it.
You are very aligned with Christoph there. He's such a fan of physical media because first of all, he loves the special features, but also that kind of concept of they can just take it away and we've lost it.
Well, look what happened when they removed The Office from Netflix in the States. We still have it up here in Canada, but they took it away from US Netflix. People went crazy. Because for them, The Office is their Star Trek. And they were like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with my life without being able to just have The Office playing in the background. And if I couldn't just put on Trek anytime I wanted to, I as well would feel very uneasy about it. So I've got all my CDs, all my DVDs throughout my, how many ever years I've been collecting them. And I agree with absolutely. I hang on to my physical media.
Well, when they removed Prodigy from, Paramount, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it's like, so grateful that I had, the physical so that I could watch it. And it's just weird because, I've owned it since it came out and I'd never watched it on streaming. But when it was removed from streaming, I was like, oh, I need to watch it. And so I did a rewatch of Prodigy, thankfully, because I had my own copy. So very, very important to make sure that you secure your own copies. Can't rely on others. Can't do it.
And if you don't have a lot of the older stuff, you would be surprised what people send off to thrift stores. I see entire like the original TOS in thrift stores, and I'm thinking they're like $2.99 per season. I'm like, I spent way more than $2.99 on each season. I overpaid. So don't forget to check out the thrift stores if you're looking to get some of the older media as well. And then I saw the old VHS pack of the original movies where you put them in the box and they look like it looks like the Enterprise.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing as a kid because sometimes I'd change the order to make the ship look funny, and I'd be like, I'm so funny. Okay. Next is the prequel movie. So news broke about this quite recently. So there's no other details have been released. So nothing that concrete has come out about this movie. So it's just pending. It should be called Star Trek Pending. That's what a lot of these should be. Star Trek 4, again, no new director or writers. This poor Trek has just... It's had its struggle bus for quite a while now. So we'll see if this ever comes to fruition. And then Star Trek Picard. Someone was saying, y'all need to go back and re-listen to the interview with Patrick Stewart when he said a script landed on his desk. This is their interpretation of the interview, that script was not Trek-based, but they so quickly returned to Trek-based conversation that people got the two mixed up. I don't know. I haven't had time to go back and listen myself. That is just what somebody said. So homework for everybody is to go and re-listen to this interview and see what you think about the whole script gate. Does it sound as though it is, like, did he clearly say this is a Picard script has landed on, or just a script? Because he may just be doing another movie.
On the bright side, we may be getting another X-Men film.
Oh, Star Trek Struggle Bus. That's the new thing. That's sometimes my life.
You know, it's interesting, you know, being out there in the Star Trek community and hearing people talk about, you know, this Picard script and do they want another mini movie or a continuation? And I'm feeling like a lot of people are not too on board with this, especially if it's the TNG crew. They seem to be like, well, if it's progressing and moving forward of, you know, the legacy direction, then they would be, you know, open to that. But they're like, well, we've said goodbye to them in All Good Things, which is the best series finale, in my opinion. We said goodbye in Nemesis, which, as everyone knows, I love that movie. So it's a proper goodbye.
I do too.
Very good. And then we got to say goodbye to them again, even more properly at the end of season 3.
Yes.
So what is this script going to do? So it's iffy from what I've been seeing with the fans. Let us know in the chat if you're interested in Picard, this little mini movie or something.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? Have you ever had one of those awkward moments where you're saying goodbye to a loved one or something, and you're like, I love you so much. I will see you soon, whatever, like at an airport or something, and then their flight gets delayed or canceled, so you go pick them back up. And you're like, I guess, never mind. And then you have to do the goodbye again. And then the second, it's like, okay, we need to move on here. This can't keep circling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but again, I mean, Next Generation was the series that was newly airing when I was a youth. So this is the crew that I grew up with before DS9 or Voyager came out. You know, I remember watching these. I'd run home from school to watch it. So there is part of me that's like, I will never get enough TNG. But I definitely pick up on other people's points on that. Let's see what else is going on. But I also think that DS9 needs more exploration post
completely.
The finale. There was not enough done. I want to know what happened with particularly the Ferengi, because I believe that the story arc of DS9 and the Ferengi having an entire societal overhaul with their females gaining rights, I found super, like, some of the goofy episodes they had. When you actually dig into what happened in those episodes, they are reformatting the means and modes of production of their society. It's a huge arc for that race that has been explored. And I would love to see what life is like on Ferenginar now, with sort of females being allowed to be clothed and out of the house. I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoy my naked days at home, but they can get old real fast.
Yeah, we definitely got to see that in Lower Decks, thankfully, with Lita and Rom, right? And so you're right. There's this huge gap of where they started on DS9 to where we see them, or started on TNG, and where we see them now, that they've had that transformation within their society. Like, that's monumental. And that's something that needs to be looked at, because us as a society, we can transform to be better as well. And so to see that, oh, you're right. That is, I want to see that, or a book written about it. That's
something. Especially looking at situations across the globe. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but particularly in the States, with the rolling back of a lot of rights of women.
Right.
And pretty much just any minority group right now. It seems that a lot of things are sliding backwards, and it is very scary to see. And I think we need to start looking at representation of societies that have moved forward and moved past these prejudices and moved past these and seeing how great it is when people have equality and agency over their own bodies, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. But this is why I love Trek so much, is it allows us to have these discussions. And one really funny thing, I didn't put it in here because I didn't want to get political, but I sort of entered that realm. I guess a Republican, I don't know the system. She's a senator or something. She was on Fox News saying how, to her, Star Wars is too woke. So she will only watch Star Trek.
Oh, she's missing the point then.
Is this the woman who did the Vulcan salute backwards?
Yes. Oh. And George TK like retweeted her and was like, "Oh, honey." And I thought that was so funny. Like, have you watched any episode? Or did you realize that, the Borg are bad? So,
wow.
Anyway, so really the one that we have to look forward to, Section 39, which personally, this was the one I would want to see out of any of these, because Michelle Yeoh, I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
She's everything. And I freaking love her and can't wait to see a kick-ass woman on the screen of a Trek movie. And I saw a few other people were saying that Section 31 was the one that they wanted to see the most. So
wow, great.
That's sort of what's been happening. And I've been compiling this while at work. So
well, hey, let's bring in the rest of our panel to see what they have to say about the news that you have told us. Cam, let's start with you. Anything that jumped out?
Yeah, I'm ready to see more Michelle Yeoh. I absolutely love her. Love to see another strong female protagonist or antagonist, depending on what she might be up to, but at least lead. And also, I grew up with TNG. It is like my favorite. I'm ready for Picard line to end. I've seen enough. It's been wonderful, but part of the great thing is going on to new, different, potentially better things.
Yeah.
So.
All good things.
Yes. And Rashid agrees with you. There's still so much Star Trek to explore.
Yeah, it's so true.
Edwin.
Oh, hi.
Hi. What are your thoughts about anything there that we've talked about?
I mean, like Kristin, TNG was where I started. And I absolutely love the cast. I thought that their send-off in Picard was exactly what I was hoping for. I actually didn't mind Nemesis, but I was left pretty disenchanted with how they wrote Data out. Excuse me. But the send-off in Picard was great. It was perfect. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am part of Team Legacy. I would love, Jerry Ryan is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would love to see Jerry Ryan keep on keeping on. Maybe I'm in the minority, but I actually want to see if they are going to do another prequel kind of thing. I do want to see them rehabilitate some of the Enterprise cast.
Oh, you're not in the minority. I'm a huge Enterprise fan. So
in my view, Jolene Blalock, they did her dirty. And and T'Pol is probably one of the best on-screen Vulcans. I agree. She killed it. Yeah. I would love to see a new sort of Strange New World era kind of, even if it's a miniseries, but seeing an Admiral T'Pol come back and just give her the send off that she deserved, because she got the short end. She got a raw deal.
I mean, her and Trip were supposed to live happily ever after and have beautiful little Vulcan human babies.
Exactly.
And that did not happen. And then even the finale, like that finale needs to be
redone.
What finale? It didn't happen. It was
exactly.
The series was canceled.
Fever dream.
It was a fever dream.
Yeah, read the books, read the Enterprise books. It kind of Trip's alive. He's doing well. He's in section 31.
Good.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. It was just all a ruse.
Yeah, they realized that Malcolm was terrible at spycraft, and so they got Trip instead.
There you go.
Yeah.
So do you think that Jolene Blaylock would even consider reprising her role? Because she's sort of been adamant to be washed her hands of all things Trek.
And bluntly, that's the fault of the fandom.
Yeah.
She was treated horribly by the fans when the show was on. They blamed her for the mistakes of Berman. She wasn't the one that decided on the decon chamber gel cream weird. That's Berman bringing his kinks on screen without our consent. And I mean, like, honestly, she's like married to a billionaire, so I'm pretty sure she's doing just fine.
What I will add about Jolene, though, is she did attend the premiere for Strange New Worlds, and she never does conventions or anything. So it was a huge wow, and a little bit of a tease as well, because people were thinking, "Oh my God, she's going to be in Strange New Worlds," and she wasn't yet. But she's creeping her way back in, and let's put it out there to the universe. We want more T'Pol.
She's wonderful.
So let's say we do an Enterprise sort of prequel exploration. Let's say we want to recast T'Pol, like a younger T'Pol. Any ideas? Who would make a good young T'Pol?
Ooh, I haven't given that any
thought.
Any ideas in the chat?
Yeah, put your suggestions in the chat. Who are you?
Yeah, who would be a
casting in the role?
good? I always think of that, like, who would be a good younger version, and so far they have done a really good job at casting, for these prequels. They've done a phenomenal job with looking for not just the physical, but also who's going to be able to carry the character well. So
Uhura in Strange New Worlds is just chef's kiss. She's just perfect, no notes.
Yeah. Well, Anson Mount as Pike. I mean, there was nobody else meant to play that role except him. And I mean, if you want to see more Anson Mount, Hell on Wheels is also a very good series.
So, highly recommend.
Yeah,
highly recommend.
It.
Cole Meany's in there.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep. He plays a horrible person.
Yes.
It's weird. Like, Brian, I know you have a lot of emotional trauma, but you're taking it out on the wrong people.
Good stuff. Wonderful. Kristin, thank you as always for bringing us all of the news this week. We will see you later in the show. Right. Okay. So let us move on. Who Amy Nelson should play T'Pol. Amy, you was kind of holding out for the next Gen recast, were you? You wanted to be the next Troy?
Well, that I would do.
Wonderful. Right, let's leave it there. Okay, so moving on. Amy and I decided we wanted to do a cosplay feature on the Viewscreen, and we were thinking about who to invite on the show. And having participated in several group cosplays at various conventions, such as the Cruise, we thought it was a little bit of a no-brainer. So we reached out to Cam to come on, talk a little bit about cosplay and show us some of his amazing cosplays that he's done over the years. So welcome to the Viewscreen, Cam. And thank you for coming in character today.
Of course, you can't bring someone on to talk about cosplay and not have some type of costume on.
Can you imagine if you came in like a hoodie?
Yeah, just throw on a regular Star Trek t-shirt and call it a day. Which I have under here, so which I'll get to in a second. But really happy to participate in cosplay. Like Halloween's my favorite holiday, so really started me doing like Fry and Lee. My husband, who is a lovely ginger, so we did it very well with the purple and orange.
Nice.
And then really, it was the Star Trek cruise that like I got the validation to do a deep dive into it. So it's been wonderful.
So some of the cosplays that you've done before on the cruise, I'm always so impressed with how creative yourself and Josh are when you do your cosplay. You don't often just go for the regular uniform, Starfleet option, or the obvious. You always really think out of the box. So I'm hoping you've got some ideas to show us. But how do you kind of go about kind of being so unique in what you're doing?
It's just really the perspective, because with something like the cruise where you have a lot of people wearing uniforms, what is the different perspective on the uniform? What is your view on it? And it can be like little small things, tweaks that you make that suddenly like you start standing out from everyone else and everyone wants to look at you because like you're just being different. And sometimes it can be a little scary to be different because you might be like, oh, I'm not being accurate or portraying it the way that it was meant to be. But really, all forms of cosplay are valid, no matter how textbook accurate it is, or if you take it in a weird, wild, fun direction. And that's one of the things I love at the cruise. I try to take it in a fun direction. You see a lot of great people who have some really interesting viewpoints.
Have you ever had anybody come up to you and kind of say, "Oh, that's not canon. That's you've taken it," or has your reaction been largely or positive?
Well, actually, if we can like pop onto my slides real quick, because that's a good segue into my little story, because I'm going to jump right to the next one here. If you could, so I'm wearing the same robe here. This was my first Star Trek cruise. And this was entering Q's costume competition. This is just something we threw together. I had this robe already. Those were necklaces we already had. So really all we bought was a mask for this outfit. And we're like, we're not actually cosplaying anything, but we're in the vibe. So like, let's participate. And it turns out everyone thought that we were from Star Trek Next Generation, just freestyling it. People were giving us stories. And even after the costume competition, which we got top 12, so we got to be introduced by John Delancey. But afterwards, we were going to the bar and Casey Biggs was there. And he looked at us and was like, come here, come here. And he beckoned us over and was like, what episode of TNG are you from? And I'm like, well, we're just freestyling it. And they were just like, wow, like that's great. So, that's an emphasis that like you can really do whatever you want, like lean into the vibe of it. It doesn't have to be the most accurate thing. That level of confidence of just like wearing something that you like, feeling like it's in the right vein, that's good enough and like will always be supported.
That is so interesting because when I look at this, I get a TOS vibe. I mean, their outfits and the bright colors and like the shiny, silky textures that you got totally screams TOS to me. So interesting that people were picking up TNG.
No, I have no complaints of being said that I'm from my favorite series of Star Trek. So, so if we can go to the next slide here, one of the things I want to point out. So this is from the 80s or 70s. I'm not good with my time periods. I just went to the thrift store and was like, hey, let's get some funky looking stuff. So, I feel like my robe can look really fancy, but like, things like this, like hit up the thrift stores. They have great, like weird, eclectic stuff, usually for sale that like you can just bring in and say, hey, this is actually from this is from that. Like, build your own story to it. Like, it's not just the story that people give. Make your own. So,
and it's such a good talking point as well, because it would attract people to you if it's not so obvious what it is you're cosplaying and there's an interpretation element to it, then that's a conversation starter for people to say, tell us about your outfit.
Yeah, but I will say it's a double-edged sword. So, because a couple of years ago when we did the Mirror Universe Day, I did a King Arachnia and wearing all spider stuff, had a crown, everything. Not one person was like, oh, what is that? Or anything, just like flew right by. No one said anything. And like, I was a little heartbroken because I was super excited about it. So like, but that's okay. I did it for myself. Like I love my spiders. I have some spider tattoos. So I'm like, this is my thing. So, even if, go ahead.
Question for you. So I hear people say, go check out the thrift stores. And now that I'm thrifting more and like going antiquing and stuff, so I feel like whenever I go with a purpose, I never find what I want. So when you go, are you just randomly looking for things and just like, oh, I'm going to put this on the back shelf because maybe I'll get to it, but it's too good of a find? Because I get so frustrated. And then I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go to Amazon and get a stupid costume where it's like, this has like more meaning when you pick it up and you design it.
Yeah. So first off, accessories are where it's at. Accessories make a huge amount of the outfit. But I never go in looking for something specific. It's what jumps out at me. What is within my kind of style already that might be, what can I use for something else that's within my lane? So, we got these before we even knew what we were going to use them for.
Right.
So, and then it was, oh, this is perfect for, this theme day. And we pulled that out. We hadn't even worn them yet, but we're like, these are clothes we would wear. Getting to that note with cosplay, like I focus on things that I can re-wear. Like I don't like the single use thing. Like I want something I'm going to use over and over again. Like this may seem like something fancy, but I do housework in this. Like I wear it, I feel fantastic. I feel empowered, and I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Like I'm not cleaning, I'm magically like transforming my house. Like, it's empowering.
Nice.
Yeah, and if we want to pop to the next slide, so I mentioned kind of the reusing stuff here. So, this is a future year that we did where I reused the same robe, but I believe this was the Knights on the Holodeck. And, adding the hat to it, suddenly it's a medieval sorcerer type vibe. So it's like reuse, reuse, reuse. Like, change of accessories, different earrings, different necklace, add a hat, no mask. Suddenly it's a completely different avenue without really doing that much different.
Okay, I'm just going to go back and you're right. Look at that. How different it is. It looks amazing and completely different. Wow. You're right about those accessories.
Yep, accessories are where it's at. So, and then I think on my last slide here, so you might recognize a couple of the faces here. And this is a great one for that kind of perspective here. So this is our Deanna Troi and a Knight of 1,000 Rikers. So we all had different era of Riker. So in this one, I am Pizza Chef Riker. And that's something that it's a perspective. Like we all know Riker, we've seen the uniform, but we've also seen him chilling at home making pizza, wearing an apron and a little chef's hat. So like, why not? Those are things. the chef's hat was the one thing I bought for that outfit. I had an apron, like, and it's really the context there that brought life to it. And my husband there is wearing in the other upper corner with the fake little mustache. He was Odon Riker when he's taking the symbiote, and like really that's just pajamas and some facial hair stuff, but and a little pillow tucked underneath his stomach. But it's context adds a lot to it. Group costumes like that make it a lot fun to have that different perspective, those niche things there. So
I know. I love how deep cut you get, because when we were discussing, who's going to be which Riker and from where, and you're like, I'm going to be Chef Riker. And when I saw you, I was like, that is just glorious, because we all know Chef Riker from, that stupid, what is that one? The Enterprise, that finale that we don't like. We saw him in Nepenthe. And
I'm thinking in Picard when they go visit him in Deanna.
Right, at Nepenthe also. But but there's two different Rikers that sort of come into this Chef Riker. That's how we know. And now that's like Riker plays trombone, and now he's this awesome chef, and you just pull it off so wonderfully.
So, and I did see that there's a little comment about specific budget about cosplay and gear to purchase and wear. I don't, but that's why I go for the things that I can reuse. Like, I don't go for the single-use stuff. Like, I go for the earrings that I can wear with other outfits. Anything you can reuse essentially doubles your budget, because you're saying, I'm getting twice the value out of this. I want to point out, I do have all this little fancy stuff, but with a very little small change, suddenly it's hard to tell I have purple hair. But suddenly I am Boimler from I Excretus, because this is my board costume. A t-shirt is sufficient to do cosplay. Like, it doesn't have to be all of, the production, the makeup, the prosthesis, things like that. Just like, it can be as simple as a t-shirt. This is my board costume. And guess what? Now I can sleep in this shirt and wear it day to day. Like, so I get a lot of uses of it.
I love that. I've obviously, as we're going on the cruise this time next month, I'm currently shopping around for all of the theme nights and getting everything in. And you're so right. These theme nights that are quite extreme, I am buying a lot of things that I'm thinking, I'm never going to get to use this again. It's so expensive. It's such a waste of money. So I've tried to kind of make all of my cosplay as much like gay fetish wear as possible, because I thought I can get more wear out of that in the clubs.
Exactly. So,
well, Rashid has a comment saying that cosplayers make conventions even more special. And I absolutely agree. Like, walking around STLV, especially on Saturday, that's the big cosplay day. And you're just like, the amount of effort and detail and creativity that goes into it. Like, and you're right, you get the whole spectrum of those who are like exactly your pips and they've measured it, on the collar, to variation like what you're talking about of, oh, this is just a theme of what I like about this character or what have you. Super, super fun. Should we bring in our other contestant?
Yeah, let's bring in the rest of the guests and continue to have a chat, see what thoughts they've got. So, Kristin, are you ready for the cruise? Have you got all of your cosplay ready?
I do, and it's funny. I don't really do a lot. I've never really done a lot. It's sometimes hard to travel with cosplay stuff. That's my biggest issue. But talking about reusing, this will be my belt for a couple nights, so you'll see me reuse this, and I'm very excited. See if anybody can put together what this will be for 2 costumes. And the thrifting, again, like, I don't really have much in my house or in my closet that is not secondhand. Everything I have is pre-loved. So, Amy, when you come up and visit, we are going to do an entire thrifting day. We will get our Starbucks, have a cute little caffeine moment, and then it's pretty much like a 5-hour day of nothing but thrifting. So
oh my gosh,
we'll find, you know, and it's just taking time, stopping and looking and trying to take some like mood boards with you of things that you want to get, and we look for close approximations. Like that belt I did have to get off of Amazon, and I'm like, ooh, because everyone that was in the thrift store looked very, very used. So I wanted something newer in that respect. But no, it's I love it. I'm ready. And everything else is going to be usable in other aspects of my life.
So I would like to share one cosplay. I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. You guys be the judge of that. But using Amazon, I ordered for the cruise when it was the Pirates one, and I got this turquoise dress, and I'm like, oh, da da da.
Gorgeous.
There were 8 other women wearing my dress. So I was not unique, but it sort of turned out to be a game, because as I was walking around the promenade and stuff, they're like, oh, you're dress number 5. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, oh, we've just already run into 4 other people with this exact same dress. So I'm like, all right, well, if I'm 5, I found 3 other people, one of them being the amazing Erin McDonald. So I wasn't too bad about that.
Yeah.
But if you just go off to Amazon, you can have that.
And that's where the accessories can set it apart.
Yes,
you know,
right.
Everyone can get the same outfit, but if you have like some different accessories at different point of view,
yeah.
But also when you run into someone wearing the same thing, suddenly it's just a mirror universe episode.
Yes.
Lean into it that way. Just, you know, you're in universe. Have fun with it.
Nice.
And talking about using this dress, I bought years and years and years before I ever went on the cruise, because I was playing Queen of Hearts in a Alice in Wonderland photo shoot.
Right.
So I saw this, and it has crinoline underneath, and it's super cute. And then I'm looking at it later and thinking, this looks like hold on, where's my camera? There we go.
Add a badge.
It looks like a track uniform.
Yeah.
So all I do was I threw on a little
I learned last night, I was chatting to this guy online, and there's a term, bounding, and I've never come across that term before, saying if you're Star Trek bounding, it just means you're wearing regular clothes that bear a little bit of a resemblance to cosplay. Okay. So I found when I first started going to conventions, I was a little bit too nervous to go and purchase proper Starfleet uniforms online. They were quite expensive at that point too. So I would wear like a little Walmart knitted jumper that was black with a gold yoke, and it looked a little bit like a Voyager uniform. And I found that was a very kind of safe way in to like show that I was doing something. And just more and more as you build confidence and things become available, I expanded the selection a little bit. What about yourself, Edwin? Are you into the convention circuit? Have you donned any cosplay?
I have, unfortunately, I don't really have the time these days for that, but it's cosplay for me is thinking as a sociologist, cosplay is kind of central to the construction of like Star Trek subculture. So engaging in cosplay is one of the most like sort of explicit ways of showing your affiliation to a very particular subgenre, or in this case, a subcultural movement. Because when we think about Star Trek, you can think about it in terms of like, yeah, it's pew 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 and cool lycra space jumpsuits, but there's also an ideology behind it, right? And I mean, really, it's Gene Roddenberry's secular humanism sort of put on the screen by dressing up, by engaging in cosplay, by going on the cruises, by doing the circuit. What you're really doing is signaling to others that to a certain extent you affiliate with that idea, and that is part of subcultural belonging. So this, you know, when we get happy to see other people walking around in cosplay, when we do it ourselves, we're not just doing it because we like our fandoms, right? from a sociological perspective, we're actually doing it to show our belonging in something greater than ourselves.
I love that.
I think one of the comments that we had was it's a little bit akin to wearing sportswear to support your team. So that kind of collective belonging of wearing
Pretty
your
much identical.
colors. Yeah. Love it. Cam, if you were, let's end on a bit of advice. If you could give advice to someone who's just starting the cosplay foray, entering, what would be a top tip that you would offer?
Ooh, raid your own closet first. Like, you don't have to break the bank for it. Like, you can if you want. That's definitely a valid route. But, like, ease yourself into it because, one of the things that comes with doing cosplays, you get a lot more attention. And some people may not be ready for that. Some people may want to come take your picture, things like that, and just lean into it. You can't politely tell people no, but at the same time, you did all the work to dress up. Like, enjoy it, show it off, celebrate it, and celebrate everyone's type of cosplay, no matter what it is, because all forms are valid.
I love that.
Wonderful. Cam, thank you so much for sharing your insights on all things cosplay and sharing those lovely pictures as well. It's just so great to see it all.
Yes.
Of course, thank you.
Wow, what a great show we've had. I love Edwin's comment about, you being part of this subculture. I mean, because there's the Trek fans. And then when you start going to the convention, that's another layer deeper. And then when you start cosplaying, man, you're going deep. And it is its own subculture, the sub community. I love wearing just my badge, to go to school or, whatever, just out and about. And most of the time I will get some comment of, oh, is that a Star Trek badge? Oh, that's the Star Trek badge, It's awesome.
And I feel I'm making the next step on the cruise coming up, because I'm going into the world of kind of makeup now. To I've got the clothing, and now I'm about to paint myself green and go full Orion, which I'm really nervous about. So
well, and last year you did prosthetics with the nose, right? You're going deep. Well, still, we've got Edwin Hodge coming up after this short break.
What else can you listen to on the BQN? Replicate yourself a mug of hot chocolate and join Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin as they discuss everything and anything in the Star Trek universe on All Good Things. Boost yourself with an energy drink and join Davey on YouTube and Twitch for reviews and live streams of classic, cheap, and sometimes more recent video games on Bargain Bin Gamer. Brew yourself a pot of coffee and join Jeremiah to discuss Star Trek Voyager on The Captain's Couch. Mix your favorite cocktail and join Mark and Matt at Cinema Z to discuss the films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Pour a cup of tea, Earl Grey, hot, and listen to Stephen and Keith as they discuss the next generation of Trek on Galaxy Class. Get yourself something caffeinated and learn an interesting bit of history with Chrissy and Jason on History with the Zalogis. Have a bowl of Flo-Meek soup and join Thad and Chrissy and a guest to discuss new episodes of Star Trek as they are released on Infinite Diversity. Have something to sharpen your mind and put your Trek knowledge to the test with the Treksperts quiz. Take a bite out of something that didn't seem edible and join Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley covering all things in New Trek, including that show that is Trek in all but name, The Orville, on Union Federation. Get your Sunday brunch ready for the Viewscreen, a live weekly talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy with featured guests talking about all things Trek. Pour a glass of wine and spill some tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with an LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the Tea, Bev? And Patreon members get to pass around that green bottle of Aldebaran whiskey once a month on the round table, and they can listen to It's Green with Mark White and Amy's Math Moments.
Well, I am going to ask Kristin to introduce our next guest.
This is
Kristin.
Hi. I wasn't
Hi.
expecting this. I feel like have my face roller out between segments. Oh, I am so honored to have Dr. Edwin Hodge with us today. I'm going to try not to get emotional. Ed is essentially like a brother to me. We have known each other for 20 plus years now. We met in university in 2002, sitting on a grassy knoll out front of the Student Union building, and it was love at first sight. We've been roommates. He was in my wedding party. Him and his beautiful wife were both standing beside my husband and I when we said our vows.
Oh,
We've worked together. We've cried together. We've played together. We've been drunk together. And the trajectory of his life is something I am so proud of. He's worked so hard and become a professor at the University of Victoria here in British Columbia, Canada. And he has really helped to form the person that I am today. And I'm so proud of you, Edwin, and I love you so much. I'm sorry, it's early. And when the opportunity came to have him on the podcast today, I was so excited that it all worked out and fell together. So please, I know everyone's just going to absolutely enjoy this. Everybody, this is Dr. Edwin Hodge.
Woohoo!
oh welcome.
Oh, Muffin. Kristin and I.
So, Edwin, tell us a little bit about what it is that you do after that fantastic introduction there from Kristin. I mean, follow that for a start. But yeah, you found some interesting way to weave Star Trek into your work life.
Yes, and kind of thankfully so. So my research has, in my regular day-to-day, my research has nothing to do with Star Trek. I study ideologically motivated violent extremism. So as a general out there in the world, I study Nazis and white supremacy and some pretty dark stuff. And most of the courses that I've taught over the years, outside of the core sort of sociological courses, are courses on extremism, on violence, and they tend to be very tough, not just for me, but for the students as well. But eventually, I kind of got to a point where I said, I got to do something creative. I have to do something that is not such a bring down, that can bring a little bit of joy, a little bit of fun into the department that I work. And I came up with this idea of, what if I took Star Trek, and not just any one series, but Star Trek as what sociologists would call a cultural object, that is the objectification of cultural values, of our beliefs, of the ways that we see the world. Star Trek's been kicking around for more than 50 years at this point. And I said, we can actually use Star Trek as a way of examining social change in North American societies, especially across 50 years. And so the course that I developed is the sociology of Star Trek, where every week we would get together in a classroom for an hour. I would lecture, which is just basically me yelling angrily at students about theory, where we would talk about race or gender or sexual orientation or inequality or class, all of this sort of stuff, but in the context of Star Trek. So all of my examples were Star Trek based. Our discussion that would take place in sort of the third part of the class was rooted in Star Trek. But then the gimmick of the course was, after that hour of lecture on theory, we would then watch a specific episode of Star Trek. And so if we were talking about race, often we'd look at Beyond the Stars from DS9. If we were looking at indigeneity and indigenous rights movements, we would look at, I can't remember the episode, it's the TOS episode where Kirk ends up on a planet entirely populated by indigenous folk. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the most racist episodes outside of Code of Honor that you're going to find in Star Trek. We look at episodes like The Outsider from TNG to look at not only to look at sort of the the growth of the gay rights movement in the 90s and late 80s, but also to look at the ways that Star Trek, how often the reality of the show didn't necessarily align with the mythos, right? So the idea that Star Trek, we've built this beautiful mythology that Star Trek is so progressive, so forward thinking, but it was hobbled by censors, by television conventions, by low-key conservative producers and writers and directors who didn't want to go too far. It actually, in my view, didn't really live up to its promise of being this progressive, inclusive, beautiful space until Discovery. And so we look at Star Trek across the decades, and we can look at how things like social inequality or wealth are manifested in the design of the ships, in the architecture that we see, in the kinds of politics that are at play in the show. And it turned out that was wildly popular. And so we ended up running it for a couple of years, which is basically unheard of for these kinds of boutique courses. I would have students produce short 5-minute videos, and you could always tell the Trekkies in the class from the folks that were just like confused and maybe walked into the wrong room, because the Trekkies, they would have like special effects. They would have transporter effects, and they would all be wearing their outfits. But it was every one of those videos was designed to showcase how you can use Star Trek as a lens to look at ideology, to look at sort of a political discourse, at social discourse, and to shine a light on some of the social conventions that often we think we don't really see them. They're invisible to us because we've been marinating in them. So Star Trek gives us that window. So that's what I did with the course.
So I have a question for you. I was talking, we had Dr. Mohammed Noor, who is genetics and science and, that realm. And he also has developed and teaches genetics through Star Trek lens. And I have used Star Trek examples when I'm teaching math, although there's not as many like concrete examples. Do you think that you chose Star Trek because it's just a show that you enjoy? Or does Star Trek have some special, like Gene Roddenberry's vision, we always say, his vision and stuff. Like, did it lend itself more? Could there be another show that you could use? Or is Star Trek just very, like, describing society that much better than any other show?
Yeah, this is a good question. Star Trek, as you say, is more than just a flashy show, right? Star Trek is, at its heart, a morality play. And Roddenberry was pretty explicit about that in the early years, but especially around the TNG era, which is when Roddenberry really, in my view, started leaning into his secular humanism. But he said the point, at least his vision, it seems to be, the point of Star Trek wasn't just to show a monster of the week. It was to show that with effort, we can be better than we are. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense for a guy that saw World War II, that lived through the Cold War, that saw the rise of civil rights movements, right? That we can become more. And the point of Star Trek, even during those years when the censors were like climbing up inside of the directors to like stop them from doing things like, for example, the episode The Outsider. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Frakes has said multiple times that he wanted the character he was playing opposite to be played by a man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That way so the on-air kiss would have been it would have been someone without gender, mm-hmm. and a masculine identified person, but it would have been two men kissing. And it was the censors that stopped that. Right. So even in those areas where the censors are stopping this from happening, we still see Star Trek striving for something greater, right? For something better, something more, which is why when Discovery first came out, and I would have Trek sort of Trekkies kind of being a little salty about Discovery and saying they didn't like how flashy it was or whatever. My response was always, Discovery is the most Star Trek of all Star Treks. Like, you can fight me. It has openly queer families, right? Chosen families, same-sex couples. It has disability. It has a wide variety of body types and shapes. Nobody was like, I mean, some fans were being pretty gnarly, but like, nobody stuffed Tilly into a corset, right? Like, people were free to be who they were authentically, in a way that had not been allowed in years previous. So actually, the ending of my course, we would always talk about Discovery as this sort of, in the social sense, kind of the ultimate kind of flower of Roddenberry's vision, right?
That's so lovely to hear you speak so passionately about Discovery, because you're right, there are a lot of people who come for it, saying it's too woke and things are kind of in your face, and you're right, it's just representation, and there's a lot to represent, and they do it so well. You mentioned TNG and the Outcast. What are the other areas where you feel maybe Trek couldn't have gone as far as they wanted to because of these network restrictions, or maybe just the narrative itself where maybe they just got it a bit wrong? Are there any examples that you cite in your teaching as bad examples?
Oh yeah, tons. Terry Farrell, they did her dirty, but also I can't remember the name of the episode, but the episode where she encounters her one of her symbiote's previous host's partner, and it's pretty clearly coded queer, right? Like, that's the whole point of the episode. But look at how it's structured. Conventionally attractive women together on the screen, very dancing around actually them expressing love in any way that isn't strictly G-rated. Terry Farrell has sort of intimated to this too, right? That this was a problem because it didn't go far enough. Or hell, the idea that both Alexander Siddig and the guy that plays Garrick wanted to play their couple as gay, and the networks and Berman and Braga and the others were like, nah, we don't want that. And so Siddig was like, nah, we're just going to do it anyways. I mean, those characters are pretty, in my view, pretty obviously coded as gay.
I think Andrew Robinson himself said he played Garrick. He'd recently watched something about Liberace, and he played Garrick as though he was very flamboyant like Liberace and basically queer. And they said, what was his motivation with Bashir? He said, well, he just wanted to have sex with him. And it's like that's how he played it for the entire 7 years.
It comes across like it's great. I just wish that there had been a wider social space to allow that to happen. And I mean, there were other things that I really thought were great. So like the Worf Troy romance. I know people are like, I
like it.
Whatever. An interracial relationship in the 90s on prime time, where they are clearly affectionate to one another, kind of a big deal. We're talking about American society, which, like, no hate on Americans, but prudish as hell. And so there are, like, some of those conventions, those matter, but yeah, there are areas where Star Trek was limited either by the interference of the censors or honestly the lack of imagination by the showrunners, which is why I'm so jazzed about Discovery. Hell, trans representation on Discovery. Like, I don't care what anything else that Discovery could have done. It has openly trans folk played by trans folk in spaces where nobody even draws attention to it. They're just allowed to exist, which at this particular time, the moral panics around trans folk. Yeah. Anyways.
One example, as you were talking about, that could have gone farther, or might have been a misstep, is the host. Same thing with Beverly and Odan, and then going
100%.
to a female host, and so then that, and I wonder what Gates McFadden. I don't know if I remember hear her talking about that. Like if she was adamant, like Jonathan Frakes, wanted that to be a male actor. I haven't heard that. And I get why the show, like, they couldn't have continued the relationship. I mean, it's, your relationship of the week.
Yeah.
But she didn't have to be so put off.
Yeah.
And
what's so fascinating to me is if you look at, like, forget disco for a second, look at Lower Decks. Like, everybody's pansexual on Lower Decks. Like sexuality is so fluid. And so, like, to look at the original TOS, but then to look at sort of what I think is the golden age of Trek is Next Gen, and to look at like gender relations on that show in this progressive space, but then to look at Lower Decks, which is just like, oh yeah, that's nothing compared. Like, look, this is what a progressive space looks like.
Love it.
Well, let's bring in the others to hear what they have to thought. And we have a question from Tim. Says, what more does humanity currently need to learn from the Star Trek ethical and moral philosophy in order to better ourselves? Great question, Tim.
I mean, it's not what we need to learn more, in my view. It's that we need to pay attention to the lessons that's already there, right? Like infinite diversity and infinite combinations. That's not just a fun little slogan you can put on a t-shirt, right? There are 8 billion people on the planet. There's no possible way that all 8 billion people can fit into the pigeonholes that we've tried to impose. Let people be who they are and celebrate their difference, celebrate them. Don't extend rights, don't extend recognition or understanding based on the extent to which they look and sound like you. That's a pretty poor foundation for rights building. We can be better than that. And don't be afraid. Stop. Why are we so afraid of things that are different than us? Why are we so afraid of these? We can overcome that. Tim's right. This whole fear of the unknown thing, that is an old prejudice. But we can learn to overcome them. Roddenberry made that argument himself, right? We can learn to be better than our baser instincts, right? And I think that we can use our media, use our popular culture, our pop culture to showcase that, right? To say, look, we can be better. It's not actually that hard. It's not hard to not be afraid of people that don't look like you. It's actually not.
Yeah.
One of the things that certainly Amy and I talk about a lot on All Good Things, our other show, is when we're exploring themes that in the kind of the TNG era, it was as much as a blessing and a curse that having that reset button at the end of every episode to make it episodic. So a lot of themes couldn't be explored. And an example that I always found what a shame that it ended at the end of the episode was kind of B'Elanna's story with depression, that it was just a one-off, here you go, here's an episode about depression, we're done. When in real life, clearly it doesn't work like that. So, I mean, are there any other examples kind of culturally where you think, you wouldn't have just got over something like that in a week? Like we mentioned with Riker and the Janai professing his love and then let's warp out and never talk about it ever again. That episodic format didn't really lend itself to development, did it?
I mean, forget the love triangles, forget that. Let's talk about the fact that every single member of Starfleet has complex post-traumatic stress disorder. You do, like, we're explorers, great, cool, but like, you've watched planets die. You've interacted with gods. You have been possessed, shunted into different dimensions, experimented on. One of the best sort of examples of that is from Lower Decks, when no one is supposed to ask Shax how he died and how he came back. And they're just like, yeah, you don't talk about it. And then so finally, what's his name? Is it? I can't remember if it was Boimler. Yeah, who was just like, what happened, man? And Shax's face just, and like, it's comedic, but also that's PTSD.
Yeah.
And the DS9's whole arc, their whole arc of the Dominion War, where is the conversation of PTSD? Again, Disco nails it with in season 2 when they're all sitting around the table having dinner, and the one officer who's experienced all of this is like clearly having an episode, and nobody knows how to deal with it. But later on, Culber sort of talks to her and is like, look, we need to actually work through these issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a powerful scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cam and Kristin, what are some of your thoughts?
I wanted to kind of lean into what Ed said about, Disco approaching trans. And I know they had the moment of pronouns. Forgive me, I stopped watching Disco after season 2. But in that scene, she's like, I forget the actual pronouns of the person, but they correct the pronoun use. And Anthony Rapp's character kind of like has this moment like, oh, okay. And I actually really hated that, because I was like, why is this that type of moment in our future?
Yeah.
Like, to me, it should be a nonchalant, these are my pronouns, cool, moving on. Like, the fact that they made a moment out of it showed that they haven't actually made progress on it to me.
Yeah.
So I see what they're trying to do and I applaud them for it, but I'm like, as someone who does a lot of LGBTQ stuff for my company, I'm like, that could have been better, And that's why I like that. I think Lower Decks did it better, in that they just don't care. It's whatever. They don't talk about it. Like, they just do the things, and it's not a teaching moment. It just is what we live.
Oh, Cam, that's tough, because I totally get what you're saying. But then the teacher in me, that it's like, if someone doesn't know how to approach the subject, then they're never going to. And I feel like that gave us a point of discussion where, like, people who are, like I said, fear of the unknown, who do not associate with the LGBTQ community, this might be a good way for them to say, oh, it is possible for me to say something wrong, get corrected, and then be okay with it. I just wish that more people who weren't involved in the LGBTQ community would overcome their fear and just take that leap.
Yeah.
And it's not impossible. Like, my husband is a teacher, and he was putting together this big performance out of his school. And he was getting a group of youth, female presenting people together. So he was, just jumping into the situation. He's like, okay, ladies, you're up. And the one girl's like, actually, I'm a they, them. And Justin, being a straight, cisgendered man, was just like, cool, noted for later. And now he has defaulted, and he doesn't use any gendered pronouns at all. Yep. And he comes home, he's like, I messed up bad. And I said, what happened? He told me, and I said, but how you reacted to it is what matters. And you said, cool, I got you. Now he just says y'all. That he just yells it up all the time. And I was like, that is a learning moment. And you don't see a lot of people, especially from the straights, who are so okay with just cool, and as somebody with a very close trans family member who the rest of our blood family has disowned them, it is a very trans rights are a very passionate thing for me. So when Justin comes up like, oh, I messed up, no, you didn't. You were corrected, you took it with stride, and you have made your adjustment, right? And so Cam, I get what you're saying, but it also mirrors how one should maybe deal with those situations, because they are still very real. And I
actually like what Cam, I think you're bang on the money. They could have done way better. The only thing I'd say in addition is you're also right that Lower Decks did it better.
Yeah.
And I would argue that Lower Decks only happened because disco happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's stepping stones, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so many missed opportunities, or just ham-fisted executions that should not have been as ham-fisted as they were. That speaks to like the disconnect between the universe as it's supposed to exist and the audience as we interpret it. But yeah, one of the things that folks in the community who were in my classes, this is the thing that it would come up all the time, is just like, didn't have to be like that. It could have been smoother. It could have been more comfortable.
And going back as well, Edwin, to what you were saying about it's not always up to the actors, even sometimes the writers, that there is still that censorship. And I will never forget, I mean, she was probably, her intentions were probably good, bless her soul, but did not turn out well. This one young woman, well, young person, I don't want to gender anybody. She asked one of the TNG panels on the last cruise. It was Denise, it was Marina, it was all the women of Trek were there. And she asked, like, you know, you could have gone farther. And she pretty much alluded to the fact that how do you kind of deal with the fact that the feminism wasn't pushed as hard as it could have been. And I remember Denise just stopping and looking and like, it was the 80s.
Yeah.
Right? There was only so much that could be pushed on primetime television in 1989. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Imagine the lashing that we're getting on Discovery because they're going too far, and it's 2017. So imagine 1980,
and
TNG
having multiple women on the bridge.
7 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any of the old Trek through a 2024 lens is quite problematic. Let's not even get started on the women in the jumpsuits. But
suits. Yeah.
You know what I want to see? I want more men in the dress uniforms.
Oh, the scant.
I'm here for it.
Scant.
We are all here for that.
I remember a couple of them showed up in the first episode and people were like, I was like, what? Maybe he just doesn't want to wear pants.
Look, there are so many guys with great legs. Just like show them off.
What? Air it out.
If you got them.
Once you get a scant on, you'll never go back. Trust me. Yeah.
I wish that wasn't more of a mistake throughout the series. It would have just been epic.
That would have been dope.
I think it's time to thank all of our guests and panelists for coming on today. But before we leave, if we could just do a little roundup of where our viewers and listeners can find you online if they want to continue the conversation. So, Kristin, starting with you, where are you online?
Kind of on Instagram at KStrats. KSTRATZ. I pretty much just repost self-deprecating memes. I don't really do much else, but hit me up in a DM if you ever want to chat, or if you ever want to chat about Trek Tarot, let me know. I'm a big fan of it, so I'd be happy to do a reading for you.
And you are also in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective.
Oh, I am. Okay,
yeah.
I didn't even know that. Look at me go.
And how about you, Cam?
I'm on Instagram at Cam Judkins. You can see some of my outfits there, as well as a lot of kitty and garden pictures.
Thank you for coming on.
Edwin, are you on social media?
Yes, but the nature of my work means that most of my social media is private. I am, however, on Twitch. You can find me at the Sociocalypse, which is my Twitch channel is currently on hiatus as I have a 20-month-old son who I'm still learning how to keep alive. But once he becomes a little more independent, I'll be back up streaming video games, talking about conspiracy theories and sociology.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Yes. Well, we would love to hear what you thought of today's show and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, which is where we all are, and to continue our discussion there. Again, do you see that like button? It's a little thumbs up. See that subscribe button? Go ahead, press those for us today so that you don't ever miss a view screen. Thank you. Huge shout out to our viewers out there. Tim says it was a great panel and discussion this week. And we have Rashid enjoyed the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. If you'd like to support us here on the network, please go to patreon.com/BQN. Don't forget to subscribe to all of our channels, as Amy's just said, just to build our listener base, but more importantly, to make sure you never miss an episode. Okay, so what do we have coming up next week?
We have another packed show. We've got Christos coming on to give us our Trek news and what's trending. We're going to have another cocktail, this time with Matthew Dempsey, and we have a very special treat. I'm just going to leave that as a teaser, so please come back. And we have Matt Harker, who's going to be previewing upcoming conventions and local events, so you won't want to miss that.
Fantastic. That's same time, same place next week. But for now, thank you all for watching, and it's time to end transmission.